celebrations. 8 times we've said it before. Here's a 9th for you. Lewis Hamilton wins the British Grand Prix. What a victory. Hamilton is back.
Now that's the reason I love Formula 1. For the first time since 2021, Lewis Hamilton expertly guided himself to victory at the British Grand Prix, finishing ahead of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. And this is the perfect beginnings to his send-off with the Mercedes team after such a successful 12 plus years with the team. And boy oh boy, wasn't it an emotional day for him. You could see already straight away on the radio, Lewis could hardly talk. Now, I'm not a fan of him, but even I got emotional with him. And I kind of understand it. 3 years for someone of his caliber of driver to not win a race is absolutely crazy when you think about it. And so finally to win at home, to break the record for the most wins at a racetrack as well, which was something he held equally with Schumacher, is kind of the perfect beginning to the send-off, as I mentioned. Now that race had everything. It had a dry beginning, kind of in between wet and dry, and then a dry ending, with different teams and different car and driver combinations leading the British Grand Prix at different moments. And through it all, Lewis's experience in all these changeable conditions paid off with the victory. Now, if you look at what happened at the end of that with Lando Norris, Verstappen and Lewis, you could see where the experience came into play. Now, while Lewis pitted a lap earlier, and this naturally, of course, gave him a benefit over the other two in the top three, he still was able to expertly bring in those soft tyres, which enabled them to make sure they hanged on for the whole final stint of that race. And that's something Lando Norris did not manage to do. And that was the reason why he eventually got overtaken by Verstappen towards the end of that race. And this is just something that comes with experience. And I don't think it had anything to do with the Mercedes W15. That was all Lewis and how he drives the cars and how he has that perfect understanding of Pirelli tyres. Although admittedly, on his behalf, he would say he struggled with them this year. But it seems today he finally got on top of them and claimed victory. So essentially, a couple of different things were at play here within the race, and it's to do with the setups on all of the cars. So Lewis had a little bit more downforce than the likes of Verstappen and Lando Norris in particular. And you could see that kind of coming into play at different moments and times within this British Grand Prix. So at the beginning, we saw both Russell and Hamilton extending quite a comfortable lead over that of Max Verstappen. And that's all to do with the ring and drag levels that they were running. Now, Lewis was a little bit slower than Russell on the straights because he was carrying a bit more ring than Russell. But as soon as the changeable conditions entered into the race, you could see straight away things are starting to turn in terms of the tables between both Hamilton and Russell, but also the cars behind. And we saw Hamilton ended up taking Russell during that changeable conditions, which was a key moment in that race, which ultimately gave him track position to make all of the spot-on calls that he did, which eventually led to him winning the race. And then, of course, during the main portion when it was raining, with McLaren's MCL38 having that little bit more of like downforce naturally in their car, it enabled Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri to make their way to the front of the race. And they started to push away from the leading chasing pack. And these are the things that are really kind of a knife edge and a juggling act throughout this particular Silverstone weekend. It's the wing levels that you set the car up in. Do you go more towards the rain? Do you go for the dry weather? Or do you go for that kind of in-between? And I think that's what's kind of eventually played up to it. But that race had it all. And I think it was key. Verstappen took quite a bit more time to overtake Norris into second place, which enabled Lewis to bring in the tyres, nurse them that little bit more through the high-speed corners, and then he had a sizable gap in which he could kind of look after the lead and then win the race. And of course, that rounds up a perfect British weekend. Now, what does this all mean for the future this season? Well, I expect Mercedes to continue this trend of being at the front of the pack, and I think we're going to see a resurgent Hamilton now start to gain even further and further confidence within the W15 as they bring upgrades to the next races. And that, of course, is going to start next time out at the Hungarian Grand Prix, which I believe is in 2 weeks' time. And then we should be going to the midway break for the season. And then after that, Mercedes again for Spa are going to have a next set of upgrades. So things are looking fantastic for the team. And not only that, they also have the advantage of having an additional 10% time in the wind tunnel and CFD up against their competitors in Red Bull and McLaren. And the difference between those two is actually 15 and 10% respectively. So that's quite an advantage Mercedes have in their pocket as they look to chase down Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. As I think Red Bull have a serious problem in the Constructors title. I think they're not going to win it this year. I think it's either going to be McLaren or Mercedes that end up winning that. Perez is literally nowhere, and he's not going to be anywhere for the remainder of the season. He's basically gone on his European summer break, in which he does every single season in which he's been in the Red Bull. And that is going to be fascinating to see unfold. What kind of upgrades all of these three teams are going to bring? Is the pecking order going to change? Are we going to see teams for a couple of weekends fall behind others and then kind of claw their way back? Or are we going to see one of these three teams find that additional bit of time to gap the other two and start to win consecutive races, race weekend after race weekend? That's something we're going to see. But yeah, to round it up, I couldn't have wished for a better end to the weekend. Hamilton winning a race after 3 years, it being super emotional. And the race itself was fantastic. We had Nico Hülkenberg as well, finishing in the top 6. So that's another great story for Haas as a team. Kind of the smallest outfit on the grid, and their upgrade has paid dividends for them. And they had such a jump in performance, which was fantastic to see. But yeah, guys, that's the video. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, leave a like, and I'll see you all in another Formula 1 video shortly.